Now, another way of organizing knowledge is using a perceptual symbol system. So this is a perceptual theory of knowledge. And so think of, what I'm talking about here, perceptual. It's what something looks like, sounds like, feels like, right? It assumes that our understanding of things is based on the perceptual mode in which we experience them. So if it's something I hear, like a bird singing, maybe that one might be auditory, but it could also be visual in the case of a bird, right? I could see the bird as well as hear it. So to answer, does a bird have wings? We can picture a prototypical bird and inspect it, expect that mental image, and see if it has wings. So the perceptual theory is related to our sensory experience of a concept and then being able to retrieve sort of a mental image that represents that experience. So picturing the bird. If it's an auditory thing, then I can imagine the sound that a particular bird might make. So a blue jay versus a mockingbird versus a canary, and I can imagine that sound in my mind, right? This type of theory has also been studied. The researchers have asked people to name examples of, say, fruit. And the more similar an object is to its prototype, to the typical type of fruit, for example, the more likely people are to name it as an example of its category. A more prototypical fruit like apple is listed by people as a fruit much before a less prototypical fruit like pumpkin is listed. And so when people are asked to list fruits, apple, peach, pear, grape, strawberry, all these are really high on the list. Pumpkin, olive, avocado, much lower on the list. These are not your prototypical fruit. So if you picture and make a mental image of fruit bowl, right? Or hey, let's just picture some fruit in your head. You're probably going to picture, these items. If I asked you to imagine some fruit, you're probably not too likely to come up with pumpkin right away, right? So pumpkin is less similar to the prototypical fruit than apples and peaches are. And so that's the idea of this perceptual theory, that our knowledge is organized according to how similar different concepts are to each other based on how we perceive them. Perceptual theory helps us understand a little bit about why we see the typicality effects that we saw earlier when we were talking about network theory, right? Robins, for example, are considered kind of, more prototypical birds. They're very similar to the prototype for a bird, but a penguin is not. So penguins and ostriches are harder for people. People take a little bit longer to identify them as birds as the more prototypical birds like robins, for example. And that was a problem for network theory, if you remember. So here we see that the perceptual theory is good at handling typicality effects. It just simply says the more similar a bird is to the prototypical bird, the more easily you'll be able to recognize it as a bird. Perceptual theory is a nice theory, and it relates very easily to how we think of information, and it basically organizes it according to our experiences of it and the prototypes that we've developed as a result of those experiences.